Honestly, I don't think it's just a big moment for the WNBA. I think all of women's sports, I think this is one of the biggest moments we've ever had. So, I feel very confident that we're going to get something done, and that's because we're in this moment because of the product we put on the floor. So we need to be able to continue to do that, and I know everybody's working really hard. There's a meeting tomorrow that's super important, and I truly do believe we're going to get something done here in the next couple of weeks. But like you said, there's a lot of boxes that we still need to check. We've added two new teams. There's going to be more players than ever, and then we have to get into free agency, then have a normal draft as well. So there's a lot of things left to do, but I really do feel confident that both sides are going to reach a deal here soon.
Caitlin Clark, the player who practically dragged the WNBA into the mainstream. The woman who turned half-empty arenas into sold-out spectacles. The superstar who made women's basketball must-watch TV for millions of Americans, has finally broken her silence on what could become the biggest crisis in league history. And what she said should have every owner, every executive, and every negotiator on both sides of the table paying very close attention. Because the WNBA isn't just dealing with a simple labor dispute. The league is staring down the very real possibility of losing an entire season. And if that happens, everything Caitlin Clark helped build, the momentum, the attention, the explosive growth, could come crashing down overnight.
My understanding is a strike is not off the table, right? It's not off the table, but it's not what either side wants here. So if it does get to that point, what are the players, what is the league weighing?
As you said, they opted out 17 months ago. They've planned for this for a long time. They have what they refer to as a lockout fund. It's about $9.5 million, which is revenue from licensing dating back to 2020, that players have been told to plan for a work stoppage, plan to not get paid for a while. There's also this lockout fund that everyone would get a portion of. Because the revenue sharing kicked in for the first time ever this year, they're each going to get a distribution. So the players feel like they are ready.
Here's where things stand right now. The WNBA and the Women's National Basketball Players Association have been locked in collective bargaining negotiations for more than 16 months. 16 months. That's longer than most reality TV relationships, and somehow even more dramatic. The players officially opted out of the previous CBA back in October 2024, and ever since then the two sides have been going back and forth like a never-ending tennis rally where neither side wants to give in. 2 deadline extensions have already come and gone. A league-wide moratorium has frozen free agency completely. And behind every headline about negotiations and deadlines are real people whose lives are stuck in limbo. Veteran players who don't know what city their kids will be going to school in next season. Rookies who aren't sure whether they should start searching for apartments or keep living out of a suitcase. Coaches who can't even build their playbooks because they don't know who will actually be on the roster. Right now, the entire league is basically pressing pause, and nobody knows when the clock will start again.
The WNBA is now facing a deadline to come up with a collective bargaining agreement. They have until tomorrow, Tuesday, to break the current stalemate and come up with an agreement, a deal. So the latest, according to the AP, the Players Association is now asking for 26% of gross revenue for players, while the league is offering more than 70% of net revenue. This means the league's proposal would factor in losses, while the players want a split that's found across other professional leagues. What's at stake? Well, if they don't reach an agreement, the season could be delayed. Right now, the Indiana Fever preseason starts April 20th.
Then came the moment that really shook the league. Back in February, the WNBA dropped a bombshell. League officials told teams and the players' union that a deal needed to be finalized by March 10th, or the 2026 season could start being affected. And that deadline wasn't random. It wasn't some dramatic warning meant to pressure negotiations. It was purely about logistics. Before opening night on May 8th, the league still has a massive list of things that must happen. Expansion drafts for the new teams in Toronto and Portland. Free agency for more than 100 veteran players. The college draft. And then training camps, which are supposed to begin around April 18th. That's an enormous amount of moving pieces. And every single day without a new agreement makes that mountain of logistics even bigger. Miss the March window and the problems start stacking up fast. Training camp gets pushed back. Facility access becomes complicated. Schedules start shifting. Suddenly the league isn't planning a season anymore. It's scrambling to stop everything from spinning out of control. Because if there's no agreement by early March, you're not just rearranging a calendar. You're disrupting parts of the league most fans never even think about. Insurance policies tied to training camp dates. Overseas contracts that players may need to cut short. Medical clearances scheduled around preseason physicals. All of it starts to wobble. And when enough things start wobbling at the same time, eventually something falls. Maybe it's preseason games. Maybe it's player benefits. Or maybe, worst case scenario, it's opening night itself.
Important, and the last couple classes of the WNBA have been able to take a step into the league and perform at a very high level. And I think the most important thing for myself, thinking about these CBA negotiations, like, this is the biggest moment the WNBA has ever seen, and it's not something that can be messed up. And we're going to fight for everything that we deserve, but at the same time, like, we need to play basketball. That's what our fans crave, and that's what all of you crave as well, is you want the product on the floor. And at the end of the day, that's how you make the money, that's how you're marketable, that's what the fans get excited about, that's what the fans want to show up for. So, it's business and it's a negotiation, and there has to be compromise.
And that brings us to Caitlin Clark. Because while league executives and union representatives have been locked in a chess match of proposals and counter-proposals, Clark has become the one voice cutting through all the noise, saying what a lot of people have quietly been thinking. Back in December, during USA basketball camp at Duke, Clark called these CBA negotiations the most important moment the WNBA has ever faced. She didn't dance around the issue. Clark made it clear that the league needs to fight for everything the players deserve. Better pay, better conditions, a fair share of the league's growing revenue. But she also emphasized something that many people seem to be forgetting in the middle of all the negotiations. They still need to play basketball. It's important that we find a way to play this next season, Clark said. I think our fans, and everybody who has played in this league before us, deserve that. That statement says a lot about how Clark sees the bigger picture. She's not just thinking about herself or her own contract. She's thinking about the pioneers who built this league from the ground up. Players like Lisa Leslie, Diana Taurasi, and Sue Bird, the legends who carried women's basketball long before the spotlight ever arrived. Every generation sacrificed something to push the league forward. And the idea that all of that history, all of that progress, could be jeopardized because two sides can't agree on a revenue split? That's not just frustrating. For many people around the league, it would feel unforgivable. Clark could have easily played it safe. She could have given the usual neutral answer athletes often give when labor negotiations come up. But instead, she acknowledged the real issues at stake. Things like charter flights, which have become a major quality of life issue for players. Questions about long-term health protections. And the bigger conversation about how much of the revenue players generate actually ends up in their pockets. These aren't just abstract bargaining points. They're real-life questions that affect the players behind the jerseys. Whether a rookie can afford to bring her family to watch her play. Whether a veteran still has reliable health coverage after she retires. And whether the next Caitlin Clark will even choose the WNBA, or decide that playing overseas, or pursuing another path entirely, makes more sense. Because the decisions being made in these negotiations won't just shape next season. They'll shape the future of the entire league.
Honestly, I don't think it's just a big moment for the WNBA. I think all of women's sports, I think this is one of the biggest moments we've ever had. So, I feel very confident that we're going to get something done, and that's because we're in this moment because of the product we put on the floor. So we need to be able to continue to do that, and I know everybody's working really hard. There's a meeting tomorrow that's super important, and I truly do believe we're going to get something done here in the next couple weeks. But like you said, there's a lot of boxes that we still need to check. We've added two new teams. There's going to be more players than ever, and then we have to get into free agency, then have a normal draft as well. So there's a lot of things left to do, but I really do feel confident that both sides are going to reach a deal here soon. Yeah.
Fast forward to February, and Caitlin Clark doubled down. Appearing on NBC's Sunday Night Basketball, she widened the conversation and made it clear that the stakes go far beyond just contracts and negotiations. And then she said something that gave a lot of people hope. I feel very confident that we're going to get something done. Confident. That's a powerful word when it comes from the biggest star in the sport. Clark isn't known for empty hype or throwing around feel-good statements. When she says she believes both sides will reach an agreement, people listen. Her voice carries weight across the entire league. But confidence and reality don't always shake hands. And right now, the reality surrounding the WNBA negotiations is messy. Here's the part that would almost be funny, if it weren't so concerning. Back in January, the WNBA went ahead and released the entire 2026 schedule. Opening night? May 8th. The Toronto Tempo hosting Washington. The Portland Fire relaunching against Chicago. The New York Liberty facing the Connecticut Sun. A full slate of games, neatly laid out as if everything in the league was perfectly normal. As if there wasn't a massive labor dispute hanging over the entire season. As if there wasn't a moratorium freezing every major transaction in the league. According to the league, the schedule was released so teams, sponsors, broadcast partners, and fans could start planning ahead. And sure, That explanation makes sense on the surface. But releasing a full schedule when you don't even have a signed agreement guaranteeing the season will happen? That's like printing wedding invitations before you've even proposed. It looks organized from the outside, but behind the scenes, it's pure chaos.